My name is Marcell Hanson, and you're listening to Small Habits, Big Changes. Let's dive in. Welcome to this week's episode. We live in a very fast-paced world for the most part. If you're in any metropolitan city around the world, things move along at a pretty good clip. Because of this, and because of the reinforcement of marketing messages and social media, I think we have skewed what is a realistic timeline to achieve certain goals and to actually make marked progress. Because of this need or yearning infrastructure to have instant gratification, we are deceiving ourselves into believing that what we are doing, what we are saying, the actions that we are taking are for our betterment. Example is we say we want growth, whether it's financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, professional, and yet we don't take the necessary steps or the necessary step to get going on making progress, on creating a structure that allows us to succeed long term, because we have a myopic sort of attention to the right now, this minute. If you look at it, we talked about perspective a couple weeks ago. If you take a step back and look at it, it's really ludicrous to hear and witness people's statements, whether on social media or a friend or just overhearing in, everyday conversation. When you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store or you're out at a park, you hear someone else stating, that this is what they're going to do. I'm going to make such and such amount of money, and by the time I'm 30, I'm going to, be ripped with 6% body fat or whatever. Before summer, I'll have 6-pack abs. And it's not, hear me clearly, it's not at all that these things are not possible. They are absolutely possible, especially when it comes to the body and the mind. You can transform, maybe it sounds like a contradiction, in a second. But for long-term sustainability, there are certainly actions you can take to get that ball rolling and to make progress consistently straight away. Like, we've seen guys that have gone from, being 60, 70 pounds overweight at New Year's to being shredded by summertime. I know women who have set goals for $250,000 net profit for the year when they barely are making a fifth of that in the previous year. There's lots and lots of examples of this. My point being, if you're not doing one thing, and I'm going to share with you what it is. If you're not doing this one thing, 100% you're lying to yourself. You're probably lying to those around you, and you're really just setting yourself up for failure because you're just giving lip service to your wants or desires or passions or goals, manifests. Stick around and listen to this short episode about how you truly can manifest the life of your dreams, whether it is related to relationships, whether it's business oriented, whether it's your physical body you'd like to transform, maybe it's your mental fortitude, your state management. Stick around. We'll go into a quick Cliff Notes version of how you can get it done. The truth of the matter is, if you say you want something, you must take this one step, this one action. You must take it to stay in congruency with what you have stated that you want. Now, we're not talking about little things like, I want an ice cream cone, and you just get in the car and drive to the store or what have you and buy an ice cream cone. We're not talking about little trivial things like that. While ice cream cone may be the best part of your day on a tough day. Not talking about that. We're talking about pretty substantial health related, business related, relationship related goals that you are really striving for. Now, these could be 6-month goals, 2-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals. The longer you go out, actually, the more important this step is, because we are inundated with marketing messages and just thoughts and, media throughout the day. It's essential that you do this. Essential for your success. Doesn't matter what you're doing across the board. You will not succeed long term. You will not even know what success is long term if you do not do this. It's very simple. We've gone through it before. I've talked about it with my stable table when it comes to hydrating or moving your body or eating well and having quality sleep. You must be able to measure where you're at now and setting your goal at where you want to be. You must be able to measure that progress. Otherwise, your reality becomes very distorted. Other things come into play. The mileposts move. They continue to move. And if you've struggled with getting traction or feeling like you're making progress, this could very well be the reason why. If it matters to you, then you must measure. Full stop. If it matters, you must measure. Again, we look at sports. It's super simple. Like a guy's batting, 283. How do you know when he has improved? How do you know? He hits more balls. He hits more line drives. He hits more home runs. Are you counting each and every time he's up to bat? If you are, you're measuring. But for most of us, we just look at his batting average. He's batting at 283. The next year, he comes back after spring training. He's put in reps and he's been in the batting cages and he's worked with his trainers and his coaches and he's batting 300. How do you know he's improved? The measurement tells you. It's simple as that. If you're shooting for, I'll give you a number of examples. If you're a guy who wants to get down to 8% body fat, how will you know you're at 8% body fat? I guess when you measure, you will know whether or not you're at 8% body fat. You have to measure to know that. You see? How do you know how far you have to go or where you're at now? You have to measure. If you're at 12% body fat and you want to get to 8, you have to measure. You know where you're at. You know which direction you're going. You measure whether it's quarterly, monthly, weekly is a little excessive, but if that's what you're doing, that's how you measure. How do you know if you want to make more money? How do you know you've made more money? It doesn't come off a one-off. Maybe you're a contractor, maybe you're an entrepreneur, you're selling something, you're selling so many things, but is your margin different than what it was? Is it more? Is it less? Is your net profit more than what it was? The only way you know that is by tracking, by measuring it. When I say tracking, I mean measuring. So to me, in this instance, that's exactly what you're doing. Tracking is the notation of what's going on, and the data that you collect from tracking becomes your measurement. Okay. So if you don't know your numbers, you'll never know if you're actually making more, because there are years where you will grossly earn 10 times what you used to, but net, you are actually the same or less. Maybe you're more. It's very different when someone says, I know this because I have buddies that run businesses and we often talk numbers, and they can sound very distorted. And they're a wonderful example. Hopefully my buddy doesn't mind me using these, and I've probably skewed the numbers a little, but I have a friend who runs a business, and a few years back, he grossed 1.5 million. Now that same year, I grossed, I think 400, and I'm just off the cuff on this. I don't remember what the number is. 423, I think sounds right. So he grossed 1.5 million. I grossed 423. From all non-business oriented and even some business oriented folks, they're looking at, ooh, he made triple what you made. But then we talked about our margins and our net profit, which is gross is what you're charging essentially. And then you take out everything. You've taken out materials, your overhead, your salary to your employees, maybe insurance, maintenance. And then at the end, what you basically could put in your pocket, but that goes into the net ledger of the business, that's your net. So the huge, huge difference between gross and net. Now, my friend, he's doing $1.5 million in sales. I'm going to say 400 just for sake of Actually, I'm going to say 500 for sake of a nice even number, even though that was more than what I grossed. So 1.5, 1/3 of that is 500. His profit margin is around 13%. Mine is 50. So now you have to think like, okay, 13%. I don't have a calculator on me, so I'm using this in my head, right? I can easily tell you that 50% of 500 is 250. So let's say my net was 250. Now we'll go to his number, which is much bigger, 1.5 million. It sounds much bigger. It is. It's 3 times bigger than 500,000 in gross profit or gross sales. So if we took 10%, because we're using nice even numbers that everybody can track. If we took 10% of 1.5 million, we'd be at 150,000. Some quick math would tell me that 1/3 of that is 50,000. So 13% profit margin would put him at about 200,000 net profit. Now, if you remember, my 50% of 500,000, 250. So I'm grossing 500, but I'm netting 250. And actually, we could do some even better math because I am around the number. I was at, I think, 423, and I changed it for easy math. But let's go back to the convoluted math. 423 divided by 2, 50% is like 211.50. So 200 and let's say $211,000, right? $211,000. Follow me through the math wormhole. Is what I would have netted at 50% of a $423,000 gross year. 1.5 million is what he grossed, but he's only retaining net about 13% profit, which we've just deduced at approximately 200,000. So virtually we have the same net, but he's grossed 3 times my gross. Now, what does this mean? He could be really under a bit of a delusion if he felt like 1.5 million is so much more than he used to make. He used to only make 200,000 when he worked by himself and one other guy in a truck, right? He'd net 200,000. Now he made $1.5 million in sales. Well, when it all trickles down, he actually is probably making very close to the same pocket money, but now he has 20 guys on crew. He has 6,000 customers he has to interface with, or has management that interfaces with. Huge, huge difference. But the only reason we can even have this conversation or that comparison is because we know the numbers. We're measuring, we're tracking. And if you don't know your numbers and you're not tracking, you will not know your progress. So you see, it's essential to know your numbers. And if you're not a business person, you want to use like weight or health related. Some people count calories. Not every calorie is the same, but let's say you're talking about weight and you want to use your number on the scale as a measurement. It depends on what your goal is. If you're looking to lose fat, but that number on the scale keeps going up, now understanding muscle weighs more than fat, you could be perfectly on track, but you're using the wrong measurement. You'll need to measure what your actual body fat is and what your lean muscle mass is. You'll have to know a few more bits of data to make an accurate assessment of where you're at. You cannot just go off the scale. Like, I used to weigh 140 and I wanted to get down to 20% body fat, and now I weigh 145. Yeah, because I've gained 5 pounds of lean muscle. I've gained 8 pounds of lean muscle, and I'm down to that or whatever. That's not accurate for me. I actually have less body fat, but I'm working on that. But hopefully you understand. It's like, if you want to know if your car is running more optimally, you will measure how many miles per gallon you get on 87, petrol. And if it's not where you want it and you can alter the timing and use a premium, the only way to know if that's worth the bang for the buck is by measuring, again, apples to apples. You need to have how many miles you go per gallon. In Canada, it would be how many kilometers you go per liter, but how many miles you go per gallon. And then you'd have to adjust for the price difference, because 87 and 91 are going to be, they're different grades of petrol, and they're going to cost more. So you might get a little bit more mileage with the 91, but it costs so much more. It's not worth the effort. But the only way you'll know that, you cannot use your opinion or be subjective with this. This is where facts matter. This is where data decides. Data will decide the reality, not you. And it's important that you understand that, because otherwise you're just lying to yourself and probably lying to others when you say you want to do something. If you're not tracking, you don't have the data that reveals to you whether you're going in the right direction or whether you've even achieved what you set out to. And more importantly, where you're at now, that you're just being dishonest with yourself. You're not doing anybody any favors. It's not going to happen overnight, more than likely, not for long-term success, but to track it and to measure it in some way, in some consistent way, is essential for your growth. The reason we know that Warren Buffett is worth X amount of billions of dollars on paper is because it's measured. It's not just hyperbole. It's not just whatever it is on paper. I don't know what is in his bank account, but on paper, people are said to have a certain net worth. The only reason we know that is because somebody crunched numbers. And honestly, probably most of those are skewed data. So you do have to look at who was collecting the data for those. For your case at home, you are collecting the data. So you have to train yourself to be as consistent as possible. If you want to know what your average blood pressure is, what you typically run for blood pressure, you need to check your blood pressure every single day at the same time. Say when you rise 7 o'clock, you're going to check your blood pressure at 7:30. You need to do it every day to see the consistency of that, and you need to document it. And that's close to your like rising blood pressure, or your AM blood pressure. If you want to check what your blood pressure is like, you want to know if work is affecting it, or the stress of what you're doing in those early morning hours, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, then check again at 11 o'clock. Okay. You have different hormonal influences at different times of the day as well, whether you've just eaten or whether you are getting ready to eat. Your blood pressure may be different. Whether you are hydrated, hydration has a massive impact on the amount of plasma in your body, and that impacts your blood pressure and circulation. So whether or not you're hydrated, huge difference. If you want to check at night before you go to bed, seeing whether or not you're getting relaxed, you're eating dinner early enough, you've been hydrated throughout the day, you're doing relaxation, maybe meditation or sauna or something later, you want to see how that impacts your blood pressure, you got to check it at the same time. You have to do the same things and check it, measure it, track it, and then you have that data. Without that data, everything you say and do is just subjective. That's it. And if you're not reaching the goals that you want, whether they are financial, whether they're business related, personal related, weight, health, wellness related, if you really want it, you must measure. That's it. There's full stop. What matters must be measured. It's something that so many people I've encountered over the last 25 years of sharing about my stable table and about goal setting and reaching goals and manifesting things into reality is, one, you have to measure it and you have to take right action towards it, and you have to take enough right action towards it. The action doesn't mean anything if you cannot ascertain where you are, where you're going, and where you want to be. It's like playing darts in the dark. When you turn on the light and you see it on the bullseye, you're like, oh, I'm better than I was the last 4 times because the darts have been on the floor. Are you? Can you do that consistently? Because we're not talking about just flash in the pan, one viral video or one summer of 6-pack abs. Maybe that's your goal. But for long term, for change, for growth, if you want growth, if you say you want growth, if you think you want growth, then what you need to do is track. You must measure. I hope this has been helpful. If you know of someone who's struggling to reach a goal and they're not measuring or not tracking it, or maybe not tracking the right information that'll get them there, please share this episode with them. If you have the opportunity to comment at YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. Otherwise, you can always reach me through an inquiry at mice.com. And you can join our wellness community. That is a texting community. That number's on the outro. Until next week, I'm sending you blessings, sending you clarity. And I want you to do one thing above all else. Just stay strong. Be awesome. Thank you so much for listening today. If you feel any part of this episode resonated with you, then please consider sharing it with a friend who may also find value in it. And remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And before you go, did you know we have a fantastic free text community? If you want more bite-sized health hacks and reminders delivered directly to your phone, absolutely free, then text keyword YES to 206-483-2960. Again, that's keyword YES to 206-483-2960. And we'll see you on the inside.